Okay, this is part 3 of chapter 3.1. Now we're going to focus on subtraction. And so there's some important ways to think about subtraction. The first way is what we call the takeaway approach. And so when students first learn subtraction, one of the things they do is they just take away, and that's how it's taught, right? The idea of a takeaway approach is if you have 5 coins and spend 2, how much do you have left? And so this is your first example of a takeaway approach right here, in that all you have is 5, and then you actually physically take away 2. And so you can see that in a set model where here's 5 and you actually withdraw 2 from the 5 there, take away. And so that's the takeaway approach. Another way you can think about that takeaway approach is what we call a set model. And so right there's the set model. Sorry, that was a set model for this one. The other way to think about it is what we call the measurement model. And so in the measurement model, we're going to use the number line to do that. So you start at 0, increase 5, and then take away 2. And then where's your resulting location? You're at 3. And so that's the idea that students learn subtraction through what's called takeaway. Now, thinking about the formal definition, again, like addition, we have this idea that A minus B is called the difference and is read A minus B, right? So the answer to a subtraction problem is what we call the difference. A is called the minuend and B is the subtractand. And that's what you're taking away from the number. And so when we talk about whole numbers, we can't take a small from a big, right? We can't do that later. So a big from a small. And so in this case, the way we look at that again is the A minus B is equal to the number of elements in A minus B when you actually take away what's in take away B from A. And so you just count elements. Again, that goes back to our set model that we have there. Something to keep in mind in terms of standards that students learn, and as a teacher, all students should understand various means of addition and subtraction of whole numbers and the relationship between those two operations. So we're going to start talking about how those two operations are related. I think you guys already know that they're inverse operations, but that's going to be seen in what's called the missing addend approach. So this is the second method that we view subtraction. And so you can see here our second method for viewing subtraction is called the missing addend approach. And so looking at that it's really the idea of using addition to solve a subtraction problem. And that's called the unknown addend. For example, when you buy something, it's $1, you give them 76 cents, they're going to count up to give you your change. Well, they don't have to, but many people do. And so they're counting up. And so this idea of solving this problem, so for example, solving 100 minus 76, which is we're talking about on the top, actually can be solved by doing 76 plus what equals 100, right? And that's what's being done here when they're counting up there. And so this idea of counting up is this idea of the missing addend approach, which says here in algebra, if A minus B equals C, right, this equals 24. If A minus B equals C, then what we know is then that B plus C has to equal A. And so that's what we're doing with the missing addend approach and how you solve that. So as you do your homework, pay attention. That's an important idea. And that's often a midterm question for me in terms of explaining those two different approaches. Here you have the different word problems as you look at that. So take a minute to look at that, read those word problems, and then get an idea of how they fall into each category. You can pause if you need to do that, but looking at here, you're going to have a set and a measurement model approach. Here's a takeaway word problem and a missing addend word problem. And so again, as you look at the takeaway is usually the most common one where students know, they just know you're taking away. The missing addend approach is, McKenna had $3 but needs $7 to go. How much more money does she need? And so the idea is 3 plus what equals 7. And many people would solve that by 7 minus 4. And so just keep that in mind in terms of that missing add-in approach. And so that's it for chapter 3.1.